Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty heavy, an Islamic prophecy about the signs of the end times. Now, this is a powerful sermon, all about the Day of Judgment, but what's really fascinating is how it also works as this incredibly sharp critique of our society, right now. So, the sermon kicks off with this really dramatic question, and according to the source material, this question was asked by the Prophet Muhammad himself. Picture this. He's holding the door of the Kaaba in Mecca, the most sacred site in Islam, right after his final pilgrimage. That sets an incredibly solemn and significant stage for everything that's about to be said. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll trace the message through these 5 key stages. It's a journey, really, starting with that ancient prophecy at the Kaaba and bringing us right up to what the speaker argues are its signs playing out in our world today. So let's just set the stage a little more. The entire list of signs we're about to go through is framed by that powerful story we just mentioned. Just try to imagine that scene again. The prophet, right there at the door of the Kaaba, delivering this incredibly important message to his followers about the end of time. You can see how that context is meant to give every single sign that follows just immense weight and authority. Okay, so where does all this begin? What's the first sign? Well, according to the sermon, it all starts at the personal level. The decay begins inside the individual, with this gradual erosion of faith and, just basic moral integrity. And you'll see how these signs are all connected. They're not just random points. The sermon basically paints this picture where, once people start neglecting core spiritual duties, like daily prayer, it leads to a life that's just guided by their own desires. And that in turn fuels this loss of trust throughout society and makes corrupt financial stuff like bribery and usury seem, well, normal. Yeah, and this idea is a really critical one in the sermon. The speaker points to this blurring of lines between what's allowed, halal, and what's forbidden, haram. To make it real, they use a very specific example from Islamic marital law, talking about how some might ignore the finality of a triple divorce. The point isn't just about divorce, though. It's using that to illustrate a much broader societal confusion, where those clear religious lines between right and wrong just start to get fuzzy. So this decay in private faith, it doesn't just stay private. It starts to bleed out into the public sphere. The prophecy warns about a time that's just dominated by this relentless chase for materialism and widespread corruption, especially when you look at society's leaders. And this really gets to the heart of the sermon's critique of a society that's falling apart. The speaker is describing a world where everything is turned on its head. Values are completely inverted. Faith gets traded for money. Humility is tossed aside for, building these huge, lavish homes to compete with each other. And both political and religious leaders, they get corrupted by that same wealth and power. To really drive this point home, the speaker draws this incredibly stark contrast. On one side, you've got this figure from history, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, an early caliph who's celebrated for his justice and piety. He's held up as the ideal. And then he compares that ideal to his view of modern rulers, who he calls thorny bushes, something that offers you nothing but harm if you get too close. But then, just when you think Umar bin Abdul Aziz is the gold standard, the sermon hits you with this quote to put everything into perspective. It's a really striking line, and what it's doing is establishing this unmistakable hierarchy of piety. The argument is that the status of those who were directly with the prophet, well, it's so supreme that even a leader as revered as Umar bin Abdul Aziz just can't compare. It's a different level entirely. Okay, so you have this personal and political decay. Where does it lead? Well, the sermon argues it's inevitable. The next stage is the complete disintegration of society's very fabric. And the speaker lays this out like a clear domino effect. Watch how this works. It starts in the home, right? The basic family unit breaks down. That disrespect then radiates outward, cutting off ties with extended family and the wider community. And when you have that kind of vacuum of integrity, it allows unqualified, ignorant people to rise to power. And what happens then? Well, that's when injustice becomes institutionalized, just a part of the system. And the list just keeps going, painting this picture of a world that's basically been turned upside down. You see a justice system that's corrupted by lies. Basic social courtesies, like greeting everyone, not just people you know, are lost. The sermon even points to an inversion of traditional gender roles. And then you have things that were once considered forbidden, like music, being elevated and celebrated as this high form of art. So, okay, after that huge list of signs and prophecies, what's the big takeaway? Where does this all lead? The sermon wraps up with one final and really sobering warning. And it's all about the state of the human heart. And this is a crucial shift. The final warning isn't about people doing bad things anymore. It's about inaction. The most dangerous sign of all, according to the speaker, isn't just that there's a lot of vice out there. It's this kind of societal paralysis. It's that moment when good people see things that are clearly wrong, but they just don't have the moral strength or the courage to actually stand up and forbid that evil. And that leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought, doesn't it? This sermon, it uses prophecy not just as a crystal ball to predict some distant future. It's really using it as a lens, a powerful lens to critique the here and now. It kind of forces you to hold up a mirror to our own society, to our leaders, and even to ourselves, and ask that really uncomfortable question. Are we seeing any of these signs today?